Although the Vaccinator has seen a lot of changes over its lifetime, the one thing that has stayed consistent is its ubercharge effect. Coupled with the fact that this medigun has always had an absurdly high ubercharge build rate, it makes the Vac bubble potentially rather overpowered in sixes, especially after this last patch, which more or less buffed it even further. Naturally, the only thing holding it back from being a more mainstream option outside of a gimmicky last defense is the fact that it can't build an overheal very well on anyone. A factor which is absolutely critical in sustaining the current style of play exhibited in most sixes matches, that being a team with a somewhat dynamic combo, but with the onset of Gunboat's pocket on occasion. Typically centered around a demo man and a somewhat passive soldier, while the other three players rotate heals, get buffs while defending the flank, or making hard pushes and bombs with those buffs. They're necessary to do that. What this does is it makes the Vaccinator a perfect foil to the stock medigun. It always has been a perfect foil all its life, even with its changes. Because while the stock excels at pushing through dangerous choke areas and preserving multiple players by flashing during a single overcharge, the Vaccinator is more of a monster at taking open, more exposed, big ground rather than chokes. Despite spam or bomb flank pressure with multiple doorways or whatever, people just ignore it. These things would rather otherwise rattle an off-Uber combo probably, and instead with the Vaccinator, players just keep walking forward, they don't care. What it basically does is it turns the entire Sixes team into a single moving flank body, with the medic just chasing heals really hard in order to sustain the flank's playmaking. Honestly, playing Vac a lot, like as a team, teaches the medic and the other players on that team what not to do when using stock Uber. It's completely the opposite. It's the perfect foil. The only real downsides to this sort of playstyle are being super aggressive full flank, Vac, all the time destabilizes the team's positioning. Nobody's really holding any positions for very long because the medic is constantly pushing people forward and chasing heals. Also, nobody has buffs. So if a single player is caught in a 1v1 wherever that may happen, there's almost always going to be that heal disadvantage, which means it's just going to be in favor of the guy who finds your player who just doesn't have a buff. And two, Vac Ubers are often centralized on single targets, and juggling is absolutely not a functionality of the Vaccinator unless you want to spend more than 25% of your total bar. You can't juggle a single bubble, it just stays on a guy. You can let go of the bubble if you want to just pop it and ignore that guy. He actually still carries that bubble for 2.5 seconds, but you can't flash it around. So there's that lack of versatility there during mid-Uber. All that said, this gun is way too fun to be so suboptimal. As I mentioned before, a buffed flank often holds the Sixes team together. It plugs the leaks so the combo doesn't have to worry all the time about being killed, popping Uber in a bad spot. It sustains that momentum all the time. Buffs are also positively crucial going into any mid-fight. So instead of keeping the Vac in a state which requires the entire team to conform to its wacky TF2 Sixes opposite day playstyle, it might be easier to fit the Vac into Sixes play as we know it now. Give it the ability to buff, and it'll be a better gun. However, a full buff with the bubble would be outright overpowered as it stands, especially considering the buff they gave to the Ubercharge building by allowing the gun to gain a slight amount of charge whenever you take properly attuned damage. I mean, look at this! The gun's basically a hard counter to heavy pyro sentries and anyone trying to finish with a pistol. I'm building as fast as I'm using it. So here's the suggestion. Ubercharge build rate back down to 50%, which is still absurdly fast. Overheal limiters removed. It gives buffs now, equal in amount and speed to stock. Build rate reduction on overhealed targets reduced from 33% to 10%, which seems really, really strong! And it is. But considering that the new Vac is probably going to be healing a lot of overhealed people anyway now that it can give buffs, the medic is going to be hurting a bit when it comes to building Ubers during the transitions between big fights. Yet during fights, the med might be able to sneak out a clutch bubble as players start to take heavy damage. To balance the overheal change, the bubbles now only reduce 50% total base incoming damage. This seems perfectly fine, honestly, given that most players, especially the ones being led into the fights under the medic's bubbles, will typically have 50% more base health anyway, because buffs. So there you go. Vac is fun. Maybe it's too good. Maybe it doesn't deserve to be good because of how radically different it is from stock. But I like the bubble machine too much not to ask for this kind of change.